Good day, everyone. I am Arnie Emia, and today we are going to discuss about an important historical event, which is the Cry of Balintawak or Pugadlawin. So, I guess some of you had already heard about the Cry of Balintawak or Pugadlawin, and you have information about it. But today we are going to take a deeper look and understanding about this first cry, and surprisingly, there are different versions of when and where the first cry happened. So, that is the thing that we are going to discuss. But before we are going to discuss the different versions of the dates and venues for the first Cry of Revolution, let us first understand what is the Cry of Balintawak or Pugadlawin means. So, the first Cry of Balintawak or Pugadlawin was the beginning of the Philippine Revolution against Spanish rule. And it is comprised of the members of the Katipunan Secret Society, which we called Katipuneros, that is led by Andres Bonifacio. The Cry of Balintawak or Pugadlawin was popularly understood to refer to the tearing of community tax certificate or cédulas personales by the rebels to mark their separation from Spain, and was literally accompanied by patriotic shouts. So this Cry of Balintawak or Pugadlawin, this is widely understood that the people who are members or who participate in this Cry of Balintawak or Pugadlawin tore their community tax certificates or cédulas, and then they shout patriotic shouts. Class, have you wondered why of all things cédula is the only thing that was tore at the first Cry of Revolution? It is because cédula, which for Andres Bonifacio is the sign of the slavery of the Filipinos to the Spaniards. That is why, in the first Cry of Revolution, Filipinos tore their cédulas as a sign that they will break, or they will come out as slaves of the Spaniards. They will become independent, and they will not tolerate the injustices that is brought by the Spaniards to the Filipinos. Now, let us move on to the different versions of the Cry of Balintawak or Pugadlawin. So, number one, we have Pio Valenzuela's controversial Cry of Pugadlawin. So, this version was written by Dr. Pio Valenzuela, and he is an eyewitness of the event. And then he claimed that the first cry took place at Pugadlawin on August 23, 1896. So according to Pio Valenzuela, he stated that it was at Pugadlawin in the house, storehouse, and yard of Juan Ramos. Juan Ramos is the son of Melchora Aquino, where over 1,000 members of the Katipunan met and carried out considerable debate on August 23, 1896. And the discussion was on whether or not the revolution against the Spaniards should be started on August 29, 1896. And only one man protested and fought against the war, and that was Chidoro Plata, or Bonifacio's brother-in-law. So other persons who were present in the meeting were Enrique Cipriano, Alfonso Pacheco, Tomas Remigio, Sinforoso San Pedro, and many others. And after the meeting at Pugadlawin on August 23, 1896, the persons who participated in the meeting tore their cédula certificates and shouted, "Long live the Philippines! Long live the Philippines!" So we can see in our screen, we have here a manifesto signed by the members of the Katipunan, which the Katipuneros are Bishop Pantas, Colonel Cipriano Pacheco, and Pio Valenzuela. And it is said that the first cry was not at Balintawak, and it was in Pugadlawin. So it stated that isang pagunita upang matuwid ang paniwala sa unang sigaw sa paghihimagsik, kaming naging kasangguni ng Pangulo ng kataas-taasan, kagalang-galangang katipunan ng mga anak ng bayan na si Andres Bonifacio, kaming nalalabi pangkasama sa unang labanan iyon, alang-alang sa ikapapanalo ng mga mananalaysay, ating hinaharap ay nagpapahayag na hindi sa Balintawak nangyari ang unang sigaw ng paghihimagsik, kinalagian ngayon ng bantayog kundi sa puok na kilala sa tawag na Pugadlawin. So, this is the manifesto signed that stated that the first cry didn't really happen at Balintawak, but it happened at Pugadlawin. And now let us move on to the second version of the first cry of revolution, which is the Cry of Baha'i Toro. So the Cry of Baha'i Toro was written by Santiago Alvarez. Santiago Alvarez is a well-known Katipunero from Cavite and a son of Mariano Alvarez. So he is a relative of Gregoria de Jesus, the wife of Andres Bonifacio. Santiago Alvarez was not an eyewitness of the event. That's why his claimed or his version of the first cry of revolution was not given of equal value. And he claimed that the first cry happened at Sampaloc on August 24, 1896. This is what Alvarez's account stated. On August 23, 1896, Sunday at 10 o'clock in the morning at a place called Sampalucan, Barrio of Baha'i Toro, 500 Katipuneros arrived and eager to join the Supremo Andres Bonifacio and his men. On August 24, 1896, there were about 1,000 Katipuneros and the Supremo decided to hold a meeting inside the big barn. The meeting started at 10 o'clock in the morning and ended at 12 o'clock noon. The meeting adjourned amidst loud cries of "Long live the sons of the country" or "Mabuhay ang mga anak ng bayan." So Alvarez's account stated that the first cry of revolution was in Sampaloc on August 24, 1896. And the people who were present shouted, "Long live the sons of the country" or "Mabuhay ang mga anak ng bayan." Now let us move on to the third version of the first cry of revolution, and this is Gregoria de Jesus' version of the first cry. So this version was written by the Lakambini of the Katipunan and the wife of Andres Bonifacio, which is Gregoria de Jesus. She is a participant of the event and became the keeper of the secret documents of the Katipunan. After the revolution in August 1896, she lived with her parents in Caloocan, then fled to Manila when she was told that Spanish authorities wanted to arrest her. And in her account, she stated that the first cry happened near Caloocan on August 25, 1896. So according to Gregoria de Jesus' account, the activities of the Katipunan had reached nearly all corners of the Philippine archipelago. So when some of the members of Katipuneros are arrested, they immediately return to Caloocan. However, as they were closely watched by the agents of the Spanish authorities, Andres Bonifacio and other Katipuneros left the town after some days, and it was then on August 25, 1896, the first cry for freedom began. Now let us move on to the fourth version of the first cry of revolution, which is the Cry of Balintawak. So the Cry of Balintawak was written by the Katipunan General Guillermo Masangkay. Guillermo Masangkay is an eyewitness of the historic event and he is a childhood friend of Bonifacio. So the Cry of Balintawak stated that the first rally of the Philippine Revolution happened on August 26, 1896 at Balintawak. In August 26, 1896, Bonifacio assembled the Katipuneros in the hills of Balintawak to discuss plans for an impending revolution. The meeting was opened by Bonifacio and Emilio Jacinto acting as secretary, and the purpose of the meeting was to discuss when the uprising was to take place. So I will present to you the evidences on why the first cry of revolution happened in Balintawak. So first, we have the El Comercio report on August 27, 1896 carried news on the disturbances in Balintawak, jurisdiction of Caloocan. Second, Sastern account described the disturbances which affected far beyond the Balintawak and Caloocan vicinity. And third, the British consular reported the August 26 uprising in Balintawak. Fourth, the written account of Guillermo Masangkay manifested that the first cry of revolution happened in Balintawak. Fifth, cédulas were torn by the Katipuneros at Apolonio Samson's place in Puo Kangkong and the first encounter in Banlat, Pasong Tamo. Sixth evidence that the first cry happened in Balintawak was Dr. P. Valenzuela's linked with the Cry of Balintowa as the first staging point of the Philippine Revolution. And seventh, the Guardia Civil's report stated that the first cry occurred at Balintawak on August 25, 1896. So class, with the different versions of the first cry of revolution, what do you think? Where did the Philippine Revolution started? Was it in Balintawak or in Pugadlawin? So in conclusion, the first cry happened at Balintawak. So why Balintawak and not in Pugadlawin? Here are some reasons why Pugadlawin is not considered as the place of the cry. First, people of Balintawak initiated the revolution against the Spaniards. That is why it is not appropriate to call it Cry of Pugadlawin. Second, the place Pugadlawin only existed in 1935 after the rebellion happened in 1896. And third, the term Pugadlawin was only made up because of the hawk's nest at the top of a tall tree at the backyard of Tandang Sora in Banlat Gulod, Caloocan, where it is said to be one of the hiding places of the revolutionary group led by Andres Bonifacio. And another reason why Balintawak is the place that the first cry of revolution happened, it was because Pugadlawin was never officially recognized as a place name on any Philippine map before Second World War. Meaning, Pugadlawin is not in the Philippine map before Second World War. Second, Pugadlawin appeared in historiography only from 1928 or some 32 years after the events took place. So, we cannot say that the first cry happened in Pugadlawin. It was because Pugadlawin only appeared in historiography after the first cry happened or 32 years after the events took place. And third, the revolution was always traditionally held to have occurred in the area of Balintawak, which was distinct from Caloocan and Diliman. Therefore, while the toponym Pugadlawin is more romantic, it is more accurate to stick to the original Cry of Balintawak. So, we are here in our last slide, but before that, let me ask you class, so what is the significance of the first Cry of Revolution? Okay, so the first Cry of Revolution is important because it marked the beginning of the Philippine Revolution in 1896, which ultimately led to Philippine independence in 1898. So, to wrap up our discussion for today, the first Cry of Revolution happened in Balintawak on August 26, 1896. So, that is all for today, and see you next time on the discussion about our Philippine history.